thing, it's because it's a pretty big project and I just didn't want to have to rush through it with you. So during part 1, I just consider that the homework. You were asked to do some trimming, and then we kept everything really organized by filing all those parts and pieces we trimmed into one of 4 different pockets or piles. And then we took some of those pieces and we also scored them. So now everything is scored, trimmed, organized, ready to go to complete this project. So if you're interested in doing part 1 and getting access to that homework video, make sure you grab yourself either the digital version of the instructions or the craft along kit that we have created specifically for this event today. And let's take a look at that photo roll. And here it is. Of course, you're not even looking at it quite yet because it's in a handmade box. We had enough paper in the craft along kit to make the lid and the base for the photo roll, which is now it's super ready for gift giving if you can part with it. And then once you remove the lid, there's plenty of space in the box for you to reach in. And it has this sweet little cover. It's obviously decorated on the outside. Open that up and it just rolls and rolls and rolls. That's what I love about this. Okay, so basically the geography is we have this cover and then we have a trifold page. Then we have this folio. This is where all the action begins. So you open the folio, top and bottom, and then you have these layers that go left and right. And then those open up top and bottom. And then I've added pieces that open to the outside, plus a trifold in the middle. Now this is a lot of real estate here, and that's what I love about it. Then we have another trifold, and then we have another one of those folios that opens up the exact same way as the previous one. So as you can see, this project has so much potential and it is also quite beautiful. Let's put this back in its little box and set this aside. Now, during the homework phase of the instructions, and you'll see right away, this is a pretty expansive little document here. We completed all of the trimming and scoring that takes place on pages 1 and 2. And now we're going to be getting started on page 3. So as I normally do this, when we organize ourselves, I have this little unit called an accordion pocket file. Normally it sits underneath my trimmer base and I just put the pieces in the file as I trim them so we can stay organized. And typically then during the assembly phase, I just take everything out of pocket A, and that should be what I need to complete phase 1 of the project. I'm also going to set aside the scored pieces that don't fit into the pocket and just keep them handy. And here we are with our black folding board pieces. And then we have a bunch of other printed and plain pieces here. I'm just going to set these aside for now. And here, let's take a look at these folding board pieces. When it comes to score lines, I always try to remind everyone that the bump of the score line typically goes on the inside of the fold. Well, there is an exception, and it is folding board. I want the bumps of the score line to remain on the outside of the fold. It just seems to work better for this type of material. So here I can find on this piece of folding board, I've got 2 score lines here, 2 score lines here. I can feel the bumps. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a 90-degree fold. And that makes the inner first spine of the book. And then I'm going to fold it on this one at 90 degrees and this one at 90 degrees. Here we have a longer piece, okay? And try to keep those straight. This is the longer one. This one is a full 12 inches long and the other one was a little shorter. Now you can see these spines are getting much larger. And I'm folding, keeping the score line on the outside, the bump of the score on the outside of the fold. And we're gonna end with what I'm just gonna call the tiny tab. Okay, this one's only a 1/2 inch, okay? So it's pretty tiny. It's the tiniest of all the tabs. Okay, so now this is more of the outside of the book, okay? This is the inside of the roll. And what you're gonna find now on this shorter piece of folding board, there is a wide scored area, then a narrow spine, another wide scored area, and the slightly less narrow spine, and then there's this tab. I think the length of the tab is 1 1/8 of an inch, just from memory. Yeah, 1 1/8. About an inch, okay? So what I want to do is connect this piece to this other piece and on the opposite end of the tiny tab. Okay, so here we have this large scored area that's gonna go on top of our 1 1/8 inch tab and leave us with the tiny tab on the other end. This is really important, and I will tell you that in the making of several of these during the development process, I did kind of do the wrong thing and I had to pull it apart, and I don't want that to happen to you. I'm going to take some of our bookbinding glue and dispense it onto the 1 1/8 inch tab, and you can see I'm doing this on the outside of the tab. There, I just have a nice coat of this glue on here. This is our bookbinding glue in this needle tip applicator. Works great for projects like this. Otherwise, use your favorite durable glue. Now, again, no tab here. I'm adding this to the tab on the original piece. Make sure those ends line up and that this edge of my new piece is not going past the fold line of the tab. Okay, now my photo roll is getting linked up. We want it to be linked. Now there is one more piece of folding board that we trimmed together, and to kind of add a finishing touch, I'm going to round 2 of the corners on this piece of folding board. Now which corners? Well, they would be the corners, once this is attached here, on one of those longer edges. And I'm going to choose my 10 radius on my punch here. We just started carrying this punch. I really like it. It has 3 different radius, and it can go through the folding board, and it's really comfortable to use. So if you need a punch, look me up. I can help you out with that. This is the tiny tab that I mentioned to you earlier. This piece gets to sit on top of the tiny tab. So I'm going to come in with my bookbinding glue again, squiggle it on, place it on top of the tab. Make sure your ends are aligned and that the flap here isn't going past the score line. You don't want it sticking out weird. You want this to look like one continuous piece of folding board. And what I like about this is the entire photo roll can be made with just one piece of this awesome substrate, this folding board. We do have it in a couple of other colors. So if you wanted to make another photo roll with a different folding board color, you could, which is kind of cool. Here's a pro tip. I do store my bookbinding glue in the back of a tabletop tape dispenser. That way I always have tape and my glue handy at all times. Okay, so this is now quite secure. So to get started with decorating the outside, I want you to position this so that your bumps of the score lines are all facing up. This is technically the outside of the cover, and your shortest flap that we just added to the tiny tab, that's on your right. Now we have to make sense of all of these pieces that we trimmed during the homework phase of the operation. I'm going to find the dark green panels. In the dark green panels, if you sort them by size, there are squares and then there are 2 rectangles that are a little smaller. This was designed, one of these shorter rectangles, to fit right onto that short flap. So I'm gonna, on the same radius, which was I think 10, I'm gonna round the corners of this panel and that will fit right in there. So I'll grab my glue, and you can use, again, your favorite 2-way adhesive. There are some spots in this book cover that you'll want to use something like a bookbinding glue because you want that panel really well secured, and specifically that's on the inside of this flap because you're going to be using a hook and loop closure and you don't want it to be coming apart. Okay, now we have this spine area. I want you to add one of the, I believe this is 1.5 inches, 1 1/4 inches, okay? And that's gonna fit right into this spine area. And then next I need you to grab a square. So this is a plain colored square. I will mention that I think most of the hard work really went into trimming these pieces to fit. There should be another rectangle for the next spine. I really do like to use the wet glue. One other reason is that if I place this and it's not quite level or centered, the wet glue gives me just a few seconds to reposition until I have it exactly the way I want it. I'm continuing on now with the next square and the next square. It's really all about the nesting, isn't it? Now this spine doesn't need to, we don't need to worry ourselves with that one. We'll just leave it plain. You don't have to, but you can. And finally, our last rectangle here, square rather, goes into that final spot. Well, guess what? Now we have all these printed panels. You can tell these go on the spines, and then there are some shorties. Watch for those, the shorter panels. There it is. And now we can place our art onto the corresponding larger scored areas and the smaller ones, and go ahead and glue those in place. Now, if I'm shy on time, I will be fast forwarding through some of this stuff. And if I'm not shy on time, I won't need to do that. And we can just plug away on this project together, which is so fun. And this is our Vines kit. It's one of our monthly club scrap kits. And I loved how neutral it was and how nice it will be for just any occasion, formal or informal. And the hand-drawn art on this is with a black outline, so I thought it would be nice to go with the black folding board. Kind of an ideal color here. So I'm going to make these stripes go the same direction, all horizontal across. And then I have one more print, the short one, that can go on, this is now going to be my outside front cover. And I will take this once again on the 10 radius here and round some corners. And then I'll nest that here. And then all that's left to do is add these lovelies to the spines. Okay, very simple. Our entire photo roll cover is done. Now, when we flip this, I'm going to flip it from the right over to the left. Okay, so grab this end and move it so the front cover is now on our left, or that tiny tab. We're going to take the remaining. These are the last two pieces from pocket A. That's how close we are. And I'll go ahead and round the other piece as well. Make sure I have the appropriate edges. Now, this is going to be covering the tiny tab, so don't worry. Like when I was doing this the other day, making another one, I realized, oh, this is too big. Like, no, it needs to cover that seam of the tab that connects the flap to the rest of the photo roll. And this, again, is the piece that needs to be really secure with the bookbinding glue or with this most sturdy adhesive you have, because we're going to have a closure on this, and if it's not very sturdy, the hook and loop closure will pull the paper away from the photo roll, and we don't want that. Next, I'm going to go into my pocket labeled B. Now we're back to our normal procedures. Here we have our rose-colored felt finish paper that has been scored twice. This is the bump of the score line. I'm going to put that bump inside the fold, and again, that was the opposite of what we did before with the other folding board piece. Remember, we put the bump on the outside for the folding board. That's your I after E except after C exception. Now, if you want, you can use any radius. I'm going to use the R4. It's probably a 4mm radius. And I'm going to round the outside flaps of these tri-folded pages. And you know what? It just gives it a nice touch. Totally optional, but I think when a book gets handled a lot, sometimes it can affect the corners, can get a little dog-eared and bent, and this just prevents all that from happening. Now, there are 2 squares of printed papers and then 4 rectangles. Now, the rectangles are designed to fit on these outside flaps, and of course, we need to add our corresponding rounded corners before those are attached to the book, or to the trifold, that is. Sometimes I don't put it in straight. I'll get that done. I'll grab my glue. Just kind of work with whatever art you prefer to see on the top of the flap. And honestly, at this point, they're not even added to the photo roll, so they can be switched around since the size of the flap, both at the top and bottom, is the same. So here, my rounded corners correspond with the rounded corners. That looks so good. And then I'll open this and take my other rounded corner flap. Make sure they match up. And then I will do the same on the other, as long as I'm at it. I had so much fun planning this project, but I will tell you that it took me 5 tries to get the proper calculations for the outside of the roll, so that there would be plenty of room for all of the layers and the mats and the folios and the decor and the embellishments. I mean, it took a bit of effort to get that nailed down, and I have no regrets because it was so much fun. Okay, now I'm going to put this on the inside of the trifold. So with the folds open, this mat right here, and the same for the other side. And I could have gone crazy and even done more interactiveness, but I felt like we already had a lot going on with this, and we have a lot of real estate for decor and pictures, which I really liked. Okay, so now I'm going to close this. So bottom goes up, top goes down. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to be shooting for this area here on the left. So I'm going to put it within the scored area, keeping in mind that this is a spine. It's nice. Then I'm going to skip the next scored area. That scored area also consists of the tab, that 1 1/8 inch tab we adhered first thing when we got started. So zone 1, this is zone 2, zone 3 gets the next trifold. And that is the end of everything from pocket B. Now I'm going to pull the items in the C folder, or the C pocket, and there are quite a few things in here of varying sizes. So let's sort them out. We've got 2 rectangles in this wine color, a whole bunch of squares, set those aside. Then we have 2 pieces that fold in half. So let's find those. We're going to bury the bump of that score line. And as a reminder, during the trimming phase of this workshop, when we cut these papers, I trim them so that the grain direction of the paper would be the same as the direction we're folding. So I'm going to bury this bump here and this bump there, and that's going to create a nice trifold for us. So now I've got my folded pieces, my squares, and my rectangles. Next, you're going to take the die cut folio. During our homework time, we removed the folio from the parent sheet, is what I would call it, and disposed of the parent sheet. This has been very strategically scored and trimmed, and we even have a little thumb hole to secure this. So I'm just going to set this aside for now. And I'm going to turn this over so the bumps of the score lines are facing up. And I'm going to fold on every single score. And some of these score lines are very tiny. They're only 1/8 of an inch apart. So when you get to those, I've got a tip for you. You can take our grid ruler, and our grid ruler happens to be 1/8 of an inch thick. So you can wrap around the ruler and score it to get a really nice crease on both sides of that gusset there. I love that. I'm going to do the same here on this end. So every single score line needs to be burnished, folded in all directions. It's a little harder when you don't have that edge of the ruler to kind of get that nice line, okay? Because it's such a narrow gusset. And then here we have the 2 lines in the center. I'm going to get both of those. And then turn it around to get the other 2 from the center section. This is a really neat die cut. You can buy it separately and pick up a couple of these and just make a standalone. This could be on the inside of a card or the outside of a card for a really fun interactive thing as well. So as far as our orientation, think about this big barrel-shaped notch that's open. That's at the top center. So here's how the folio works. The wings, the bottom wing comes up and then it goes down. From the right, we can go in. Left, we can go in. then the bottom goes up, and then our closure comes down, and you just turn the half moons up, and then it'll just catch the little lid there. I have created these little mats, but the challenge here is that we have this hole in our cover. And I like it when I just have really practical, simple tools. I happen to have just a 1-inch circle punch, and you'll also need a pencil to make a mark here. So I'm gonna nest this temporarily without adhesive onto that outside cover, and then flip it over so I can see the barrel, and I'm gonna trace around the edge of the barrel. Barrel was the best name I could come up with for that. I'm gonna take my traced image here and center my punch over it so that it's kind of equally positioned on all sides. And there we have it. Now I can take this and apply some glue. I'm even going to go just in that tiny little area between the edge of the circle, just so it's nicely attached there. And I'm going to center this on top of this scored area to make the outside front cover of the folio. Cool, right? Okay, so now, again, here's the top, here's the bottom, and this piece is gonna go on the inside just to give us some reinforcement, and I'm gonna make sure I avoid putting glue around this. So maybe I'll put the glue on the folio here so it's attached nearby, and I'll put the rest of the glue on the perimeter of this wine-colored mat. Yeah, that's probably safe. And then I can center it into this spot without getting any adhesive on my clasp. There we go. Nice. Okay, that's it for those. Next, I want to focus on these pieces that go on the inside. So open everything all the way up and find the light green or whatever color you're using, the trifold. And you know what? I am going to go ahead just because I like it, the look of it. I'm going to round these corners again on the R4, which is the center. Cutest little punch in the center. So I'm going to close it so the top goes down last. Flip it over. Add my glue. And this is going to go right in the center of our thing. Now, if down the road you think, oh, it'd be nice if there was another paper behind it, go for it. I just, I had to draw the line somewhere. Now, what I liked here is I'm going to go ahead and punch the outer corners. And I can do them while it's folded and go through both layers. I'm going to place this one so that the score line is on the left and it opens to the left. I'll add my adhesive. I'm going to be doing a lot of that today. And center it within this scored space. I just really wanted these pieces to all be the same size, and that way it's nice and consistent for you when you're trimming your photos or other embellishments. You know the size of every single square inside this folio. Now this one, I'm going to have you place it so that it opens from left to right, so all these go out rather than going over the center area where we have the trifold. So again, the score line will be on the right edge here, and it will open outward. Okay, now we've got all of these squares, tons of squares, but not enough to mat every single square on the folio. This time I'm going to speed things up a little bit. I'll grab my rusty, trusty adhesive transfer adhesive, what's the official thing? Adhesive transfer tape dispenser. And I'm going to go down the line and apply my adhesive. Now this, I like this because this is just super fast. With those interactive ones, I like to have something real stable, but these mats I feel pretty comfortable with. So I have all of these spots, everything really except for the back and this one to cover. So I can choose. One of the things that I really liked is to have a print on the inside of this wing. So after it's closed, I'm going to add a color here, going with light green. There's no specific plan for these. And then when this is closed, I'm going to go for this print here. Just a little, and a photo or something will probably end up going there too with it, but I like it when it's just starting to open, that it has color. Same here on this flap. I'll add another wine color. And on this one, I'm going to add this pretty rose color. This one I'll maybe leave that blank for now. And I'll add green here. And a wine here, since I've got wine over here already. I've got another print. So I'm just kind of walking you through my strategy for these pieces. There. Nice, nice, nice. That is so cool. Enter the photo roll again. Now this piece, be really careful here. This is the spine, this is the seam, and this is going to go on top of this seam and completely hide it. For this, again, my preference would be to use the bookbinding glue so that it really stays in there nicely. And I'm going to go pretty close to the edge here just to make sure I make great contact with all of those uneven surfaces with that connecting seam on this area here. Center it within that scored area. Give it a little downward pressure. Maybe while we're waiting for that to bond a little bit, I'll show you the closures for these trifolds. I'm going to separate with scissors. These are already paired up. I just like to be consistent when I'm adding the dots. So let's just say I want to find the scratchy side, the hook side, and I'm going to put that, remove the backing for that. Now they're paired together, but I have the backing removed from the scratchy side. And I'm going to center that right at the top of my trifold here, and then remove the backing from the loop side or the soft side. And then I'm going to just put that right on there. Now these won't be popping up all the time. And I want to be consistent. So I'm going to find the scratchy side, remove the backing while it's face to face, add it to the center of this, then remove the backing on the other half, and I can connect it. Now we have our folio in here. Pocket C is empty. Let's grab pocket D. And if you're like, when is this going to be over? Stay tuned, because I'm going to help you make a gift box for this unit as well when we get to the end of this little workshop. That's your bonus of the day, is that beautiful gift box. So again, we need to repeat our folding in, and I just have no idea how long this is actually going to take. So I may fast forward through this since you know the drill. And what I usually encourage people to do is perhaps even consider watching the entire workshop one time through. And I know it takes time, but maybe you can do it while you're like on the treadmill. I know I have a member that watches the workshops while she's on her treadmill. And then when she's done, she's ready to craft. Like, she knows all the answers to the questions and doesn't even necessarily have to watch the video again. Okay, this is basically a repeat. Now remember, we had all of the squares, and then we have those two odd shaped rectangles. So let's position it with our barrel opening at the top, and then I'll temporarily place my wine colored rectangle centered within the space. Turn it back over without moving that rectangle. Give it a trace and a punch. So now again, here is my cover. I'll center that. Now, if you wanted to nest this with like a print or something like that, you can do that. I just traced the barrel again and centered it and managed to nail it. So that is up to you. Now, this is, again, the inside. You've got your little thumb hole, your half moon shape on the outside. So I'm going to put a little adhesive around that. You could even go through the middle. And then I'm going to take this remaining wine colored rectangle and put adhesive around the perimeter of this. And then I can nest it on the inside. Remember, the inside. Don't cover that little half moon thumb thing, or you won't be able to latch your folio closed. It's such a clever little latch too. Now remember those scored pieces, those are sitting right here. Let's grab that. We've got the ones that just fold in half. I should find a place to always put my bone folder so it's always where I know it is instead of some random place under some random sheet of paper. I do that a lot. Okay, then we have the trifold, remember. Optional corner rounding, totally your call. I think it's a minimal amount of effort with a maximum attractiveness. And then these, again, I can do both layers at the same time with my punch. I like that it has a little collector in the bottom too. And I can grab my first center trifold, make sure, again, the barrel opening is at the top. Just always be watching your geography so you don't lose track of where you are. Especially if you're using bookbinding glue, because once it bonds with the paper, it's pretty much there to stay. Oops, center that in there. It's a larger space. And then I'll make sure that the folded edge is on the right for this piece, so it opens to the right. And then this one, I want the seam so it folds to the left. At least that's my preference. But, you know, if you would rather it open the other direction or open to the top, totally your call. Okay, to show you again how fast this can go, I'm going to take all of my prints. Now I've kind of closed this up so I can make sure I have decoration on these first look panels. And maybe go green on this one. And open it up, and I'm going to get these outer flaps. So maybe I'll put prints on these this time. And this one. Okay, now I'm going to open it all the way up, and I'll add a green over here. And a wine. Gosh, there's a lot of wine. I should have put a wine on the outside. I can put one here if I want. And the rose, I put one in each corner. So there's no assignment. You can just put things wherever you want to put them. All right, that's blank. That's totally okay. So I'm going to go bottoms up, and then tops down, right in, left in. This comes up. Be cute even if you numbered them. Okay, bring in your roll again. Grab your bookbinding glue, and this is a more even surface than the last one, so it's not quite as important to make sure you've got, but for sure at that perimeter, we don't want this falling out. It's going to be pretty substantial when pictures are added. So center this within the very last section of your photo roll. Give that a little pressure for a second so it, you know, bonds well to the surface. Okay, then the big prayer, the big hope is that as we roll this up, all of this, the spines, oh, that is a very nice fit. I think I finally have the clearance really well calculated for every spine, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that it's nice and flat when it's closed. So let me show you the change that I made so you can kind of see what a process. This was the very, well, not the very first one. Like, I have a garbage can full of my failed attempts on making this work. Like, at first I drew it out a lot, then I trimmed some pieces and scored them, and that didn't work. Which end do I connect? Threw them in the garbage. I tried and tried and tried until I got it to this point. But you see how this top is kind of coming up? There's not enough clearance here on this first prototype. So this was my prototype. And, but it was fine. I decorated it, and that's my first one. Then I made some more with different collections of paper just to add variety. And each time I made one, I made changes and improvements. So yeah, I have a lot of days in this, but I think it was worth it because it's such a cool, beautiful project. So at this point, I think it's safe to add our closure here. So I'm going to once again find the hook side or the scratchy side and remove the backing. Then I'm going to center that in here. And this is why you want this paper to be well adhered so it's not popping up when you open the book. And then I'll remove the backing from this. And remember too, you can add pictures and elements to this considering this as the top or with the side as the top. I mean, it's totally up to you how this comes together as well. Now I'm going to set this aside for now, and I'm going to show you that bonus box because I think this is a really cool box, and this technique can be utilized with anything. Like, all I did was measured the length, width, and height of my piece, and that's how I calculated all of it. We're going to make sure that we always work with the paper positioned vertically, meaning this is shorter than this. This is 12 inches. This is like 11 1/4, I think. Okay, there are vertical score lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. I always like to start at the vertical score line number 3, and we're going to cut from the edge to this intersecting point of the second score line. And I'm cutting to form what I would call a dart. I remember making clothes at home with my mom when I was little, and I would cut the fabric, and then she would say, cut a dart there. And that's my favorite. Okay, do you see this? This is the dart that went away, and this basically consists of the score line coming to a point right at that intersecting lines there. Now, here's the fourth vertical score line. I'm going to enter a little to the left of it and angle up toward the second intersecting line like I did before. Then I'm going to come along here and just remove this entire score line while I angle toward that corner and take out this whole corner. So you see this piece? It's not quite a rectangle. This is the rectangle, but it fans out this way and fans up that way. So just a slight angle. And if you look at page 4 of your instructions, it shows a picture of that very thing in detail on here. I spent a lot of time making that drawing. Now, I had too much tab length here just because of the size of this box after making 1 or 2 of them. And I realized it'd be best if we just remove this tab just past the score line so we have a shorter tab. Okay, it's almost like a square shape. Now, remember I said there were 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. I'm going to go to line 2, and I'm going to make my dart. And all the childhood memories come back, cutting fabric on the kitchen table with my mom. Okay, that dart is gone. Now I'm going to enter just to the right of this first score line. Stop when I reach the corner there where the lines intersect. Then remove that corner and a little bit of that score line. Good. Now I need to take off the tab right above that other score. Gone. Lovely. Turn the whole thing around 180 degrees, and I'm going to repeat that. So I'm on the third score line, going up, stopping at the second intersection, removing the dart. Then I'm going to go to that corner, remove the entire corner. Then this tab has got to go. It's just too much. Then I'm going to go to this one. This is the second vertical score line. Probably the most important move here is that you make that 180 degree turn and not a 90 degree turn. Otherwise, then you end up with what I call a windmill and not these cute little tabs and walls and such. Remove that last corner. Remove a portion of that tab. Now you have some scraps to throw away. Let's set this aside for now, and I'm going to grab the lid. Same thing. This area right here in the middle is the size the lid is going to be. Same rules apply, but these are a little easier. So I'm on the third vertical score line. Remove the dart. Remove the corner. And this time you don't have to worry about taking out that extra tab. It's not a problem with the size walls we're working with here. There's the dart on the second score line. And then taking out the first one and the whole corner. So now I have 2 tabs. Rotate it 180 degrees so your tabs are pointing up. And 1 more repetition of that process. As long as we have the lid here, let's go ahead and make it. When we start, I want to make sure that these tabs are facing top and bottom, and you have longer walls here, shorter walls there, and we need to fold on these score lines. So I'm going to take my bone folder and just fold. I'll rotate and get this one. And as long as we're at it, let's just go and fold on these other ones too. These are going to become the short walls of our lid, rather. And fold in just the second line of that little tab. I'll fold on this. And then on the second line of the tab. All right, let's go back to our original geography. I just can't stress enough how important that is. I'll take my bookbinding glue again because I like a nice secure wall here. You can use your standard tape too if you prefer, but I just like a nice sturdy adhesion. I'm putting adhesive on this outside long flap. This is going to become our long wall. So all I need to do here is just fold down on that glued area to form a double thickness of paper. Now I can bring up the wall, and I'm going to tuck in these little tabs. Now you can practice this, but what's going to happen is this is going to come up and over and secure that tab, but we need adhesive on it. So I'll take my bookbinding glue and apply it to this short flap. Once again, I'm going to form a 90-degree corner with these tabs and sidewalls. Bring that up and around. And then if you want, you can stand it on edge and burnish it a little bit with your bone folder. Now rotate, and I'm going to once again apply adhesive to this little flap. Bring it up and around. And secure it with my bone folder. That is a beautiful box lid. Congratulations. Okay, I'm setting that aside, and now I'm going to grab my other base again. The bumps of the score lines are facing up, and we do need to go ahead and fold on every single score line that remains. Now look at this carefully. This is shorter and this is longer. And if you need to verify, this area is 4 1/4 and this is 5. Okay? This means you got it correct. You'll have these little tabs here, little tabs there, top and bottom. I'm going to do the same exact thing with one additional step added. So first comes the glue on the outside long wall. And push it down, and because this paper has texture, you might need just a second more time to bond with the paper. I'm going to bring these tabs up, and once again, look how that wall is formed. This is going to go up and around. One of the things I want you to do, let's see, I think it'll be easiest if we put glue on this wide area and the narrow area. So I'm going to put glue here and on this. I think that'll work. I've been putting it on the back of these tabs, but I think it's one and the same. Yep. Okay, we're gonna go up and around. Make sure these corners are nice and squared. Turn it on its side. Get that bone folder in there so that all these tabs and everything are firmly attaching. Same thing here. Now I'm gonna rotate that 180 degrees, apply the adhesive to the wider part of that flap and the skinny part. Okay, up and around. You know, I'm just gonna get this one little spot right here where that overlaps. Yeah. Okay, and then just make sure it's nice and square once again. Not sure at what angle you'll be able to see with the camera here. Just make sure you get down in there really nice. Oh, and this heavyweight paper makes it a beautiful box. All right, let's do the fit test. This goes down into here, and I designed it so you'd be able to reach in and grab it. So I gave it a little width, which I really like. You got room for your thumb and your finger to get in there. The lid comes on, and all that's left to do is gild that lily. So beautiful. Let's take a look at that finished piece now. For those of you just joining us too who didn't do the prep, we've got a whole pile of all these elements that can be selected to decorate your photo roll. So like, for example, this was originally designed for a scrapbook page. It's too big for that, obviously, but I was able to isolate this portion of it, trim it out, and I even used one of my photo mats to mat it. You have endless options, and then you'll have enough material left to be able to make another scrapbook page or two. Then this comes out. I used scraps and photo mats and elements from the cut aparts to decorate the front. Now let me show you what I mean. See, this was not glued on properly. Do you see what happens here? If I put bookbinding glue there, and I could do that anytime, I will, then this doesn't come up when the hook and loop dot is functioning. Okay, here I added one of the squares, I matted it, just a little scrap here to anchor things down, and added that cute little gold embellishment. A little tag down over here with ribbon. Here, enjoy every moment on the front. Some more elements. Left this pretty open because I want to be able to add all my pictures here, right? Because that's going to be so cool when it's filled with pictures. I should have had that done for you for now, but it's been a little crazy around here. Here's the next one. I used another square again. A little decorative element on the front. A little seasons change, and so do we there. That's kind of pretty. I mean, the possibilities. It's amazing. I love it. Okay, so you roll that back up and pop it in the box, which is also decorated, both the base and the inside of the lid, with extra elements that came. Now, here's what happens. These instructions become a valuable thing, so don't get rid of these once you're done with the project. The instructions can be recycled, so you just pick another Club Scrap kit and you substitute the papers one for one, and you can even write it down, like paper A instead of being dark green is now going to be blue, and paper B instead of being rose is now going to be red. And then you just write it down, and that way you keep track of everything beautifully. All the pockets keep you organized, and then you just put it on repeat. So this one I did with Club Scrap's Harbor Town collection. So lovely. See, this is where I hadn't yet fixed the clearance on the flap. Now, you know, that's just a page out of my book. That's what my world is like, just fixing flaps and making prototypes and samples and more and more and more and more and more and more. I love it. So fun and so bright and happy, right? That's Harbor Town. You can buy a Harbor Town kit and you'll still have enough left to make cards or, you know, whatever you want with that. Then I made one with our most recent kit. It's called Lotus. The smallest moments can be the most special. I still hadn't fixed the clearance issue on this, so this keeps popping up. We keep this love and a photograph. Oh, look at that. Isn't that pretty? You are my good days. Oh my goodness. Beautiful. And then my colleague Karen took it for a test run. This was actually the second one made. And again, we realized we had some fixes, so we just kept refining this. She made a ribbon closure for hers. Again, this one with our kit 301. So much fun, right? I love it. I hope you love this too. I just want to keep making more and more and more. And every time you make one, you'll get better and better at it. I know that's the case for me. Well, that's what I got for you today. Thank you as always for joining me for this photo roll adventure. Thank you to Brian and Carol at One of a Kind for hosting this event. Once again, we appreciate you. And I hope you all have a wonderful and blessed holiday season. I'll see you next year.